All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I am finally back here with my co-host Trevor Kaufman. And Trevor, I think this is episode number 57, and it's been a while. I apologize for us. We left for like almost 4 weeks, Trevor, I think. But we had school coming up. We had to move back in and everything. So we finally got right back around to it. But
hmm
we're back and we're here to talk about some sports like always. And Trevor, it's a good time for sports because, we have football right around the corner. Both college
Right.
and the pros. College football actually started, really to me, started last night, Thursday night, with the Ohio State Minnesota game. That I watched that game. That was a really good game for a lot of the game. It was fun. And then tonight with, North Carolina lost to Virginia Tech. I
Yeah.
just watched that game. That was a really fun game to watch. What a crazy pick that I think the quarterback Sam Howell, right, for UNC. Yeah, he threw a pick at like the last second, driving down the field to try to tie, and it was just a crazy, like super unlucky pick. So it was a crazy, wild game, and the first upset of the season, starting off on a Friday night, not even a Saturday. So it's good to have college football back. And we also have the NFL right around the corner. Obviously, preseason just wrapped up, Trevor, and football's on. NFL football's on in what? Now it's 5 days, I think, or 6 days. Sorry. Next Thursday is the opening
hmm
night, and yeah, it's just right here. So we got a lot to talk about in regards to that. But before we get to that, we wanted to talk about what we missed, which was the NBA, and more specifically the NBA Summer League. Because Trevor, I mean, you and I both watched this, like probably more. At least I did, probably more than most fans would.
hmm
But I actually enjoyed it. Like there was some good play going on, especially from the higher end prospects. I don't know if you've
Right.
anything to say about that or anything you want to touch on with some players there stuff. But
Yeah. No, I thought Summer League was very, very interesting. I believe the Kings won it again. I feel like they win Summer
they
League every
did.
year,
They
but it
did.
doesn't translate to anything.
Nope.
For me, Summer League now is not as important as a Suns fan. It just it,
Yeah.
it looks a lot like a high level college game to me.
Mhm.
There's a lot of high level college prospects who are playing, but there's also a lot of G League European guys who are looking to scrape onto the bottom end of a roster. So the play was it was good. It was very
Yeah.
interesting to watch some of these high end rookies play.
Mhm.
Jalen Green looked like a superstar in summer league. I mean, again, it's a very small sample size. He only played like 3 or 4 games, but I thought he looked fantastic.
Mhm.
I thought, what's his face? Jalen Suggs was very, very good. I thought Jonathan Kuminga was very good. Kate Cunningham was okay. I expected a little bit more, but he did have one big game where he got hot from three. The only player to me that didn't really stand out was Evan Mobley. And I'm not trying to knock on Ryan's, hero in
Yeah.
Cleveland,
No, it's
but
fair.
my point is, and this is what we saw with DeAndre Ayton, and we're seeing it with Marvin Bagley, and we see it with
Mm.
other young big men across the NBA, is
Yes.
there is a big learning curve for big men who dominate at the high school level and dominate the college level and now come into the NBA. Just because today's NBA is so geared towards, it's geared against big men, right?
Yep.
Like the way fouls are called, the way big men aren't allowed to be physical, the way little guys can just flop to the ground and get a charge. The game doesn't favor the big man. Evan
Yeah.
Mobley didn't look great in summer league. He was very inefficient. His shot looked okay. I see the potential. I see why people are very high on him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had a slow first year or two. I don't think he's going to take over the league right away. He's not a
Mhm.
Jalen Green. He's not a Luka Doncic. He's not a skilled ball handler guard who can, shoot it from anywhere. So he was a little disappointing. I don't want to say disappointing. He just wasn't as
He was
wow as
underwhelming.
the underwhelming, I would say, for what we saw from some of these
Sure.
other guys. A little unfortunate. I did want to see how Josh Giddey looked. I know he got injured
Oh.
very early in his first summer league game, so that's also kind of a little bit of a disappointment for me. But
Mhm.
other than that, I thought summer league was entertaining. I liked what I saw from my guy Jalen Smith. I think he will be a contributor this year without Dario Saric in the lineup.
Hope so.
And yeah, that's all. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, so before I talk about a player or two from summer league, I know I just wanted to talk about Evan Mobley because I look, you said what you said was true. He didn't play as well as these other top picks. He struggled particularly, statistically, right? He didn't shoot very well from the
Mm-hmm.
floor. He didn't necessarily rebound very well, especially for a big man. And he just didn't, when you watched him, he wasn't dominating the game really.
No.
That's just not what he was doing. Now, I do want to say, I think for big men, especially big men like Mobley, guys who are he's really, really thin. He's a small guy, at least in terms of weight.
He is very thin.
It takes time, right, for these guys to fill out,
Totally agree.
to come into their own. And you were saying that, you were talking about Ayton, right, and Bagley. Like, I mean, look, like, these guys, like big men, they just take longer. Guards, a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, they could kind of jump right in, and just they can just score, right? Like, look at Cam Thomas, Trevor. I mean, Cam Thomas is a pure scorer. He's as pure a scorer as you're going to get. The guy, all he does is shoot. He averaged 27 points a game in summer league.
Yeah,
I mean, that doesn't mean
nice.
he's the best. That doesn't mean he's going to be the best player out of the class. It just means that, like, he was probably the most ready, for summer league, because he's just a pure scorer. Mobley, he's just much, it's going to take longer for him to develop. The Cavs want to be able to run their offense through him. That's what they try to do in summer league, run him at the elbow, let him manage the game from there. Let him make the passes right from the elbow. He's the facilitator. Okay, so it's going to be very interesting watching him. I do agree with you. He's going to take a year or two to develop. It's just how it's going to be. He's not going to come out and win Rookie of the Year. That's going to be Jalen Suggs or Jalen Green, okay, in my opinion. I think it's going to be one of those two. They're the most NBA ready. They're going to be elite right away, and they're going to be the most flashy players, particularly Green, but Suggs will be flashy as well. So, that's just my take on that. And, I wanted to talk about Cade Cunningham for a second, because Cade Cunningham, I said it before the draft, I don't think he's the best player in this class, and I think everyone saw hints of this. And it's summer league. I get it. It's 3 to 4 games of these players, right? They don't even play all summer league. But I just think when you're watching these guys, I just think Jalen Green is he's just a better player, Trevor. He's more polished than Cade Cunningham. He can score everywhere on the floor. He can blow by players. Cade, he looked smaller than advertised to me. And he did what I thought he would do. He would shoot jumpers. He shot them well in one game. He had 7 threes, as you said. That's what he's going to do at the NBA level. Okay, especially early in his career. He's going to shoot a lot of threes. He'll have a few games where he gets hot, has a lot of points, but he won't do much else other than that. He didn't really get to the foul line at all in any of the games that he played. I want to say he had maybe no free throws, maybe like 2 or 4. He did not have a lot of free throw attempts in these games. He didn't, he didn't really get to the rim very often. It's just everything that I, thought going in is kind of what I saw there. So I don't know. He's going to be a good player, but he won't be the best in this class. That's kind of just what I saw from summer league, and that's what I expect to see come the season. And yeah, I mean, I just think Jalen Green showed that he's going to be the best scorer in this class and potentially even the best player. Definitely top 3 in this class, probably one or 2 behind him or Mobley. I just love both of them. So I think Green was fantastic. He seemed to have that mentality, that kind of, I don't know, clutch mentality. He always seemed to hit big shots, tough shots, really tough shots, especially against Cleveland. When I was watching, he was hitting really contested shots over Lamar Stevens and Isaac Okoro, 2 really good defenders at the NBA level. So, he looked really nice. So those are just my takes on summer league. But yeah, I think Green was sensational and Cunningham was as expected.
To the Cade argument, I agree and disagree a little bit. I think I partially blame the Detroit summer league coaching staff for this. I don't know why they were so adamant on having Killian Hayes run the point so much. I felt like Cade just kind of floated into the corner a little too much. I felt like he was just not in a lot of their action. And for whatever reason, Killian Hayes was the primary ball handler. Cade took it up some of the time. But I think Cade should be the point guard, the ball handler, the floor general, for Detroit night 1, whoever they play. I know the schedule just came out. And I think he will thrive a lot more than what he did in summer league. Again, summer league is a very bad indicator, I think, of how these guys are going to turn out. It's just a way to get their feet wet, get some game time, get some run in them. But I agree, Cade was not overly impressive in summer league. I partially blame the coaching for that. I felt like they didn't get him involved enough. They didn't make it a point of emphasis to have him be the primary ball handler. And I completely agree with you on Jalen Green. Before we move on, Jalen Green was magnificent. He is a tough shot maker. He kind of reminds me of like his game almost kind of mirrors like a Michael Porter Jr., but like obviously he's more of a ball handler than Michael Porter Jr. I think his ability to make tough shots and contested shots is very unique, especially for a guy who's so young. So that
Yeah.
I thought he was very, very impressive. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think he's going to be sensational. And I'm glad you also, I think you shouted out Jalen Suggs at some point. Maybe you didn't, but if you,
I did. He
but
looked really
yeah,
good.
but yeah, he did look really good as well. I know he got hurt like in game 3, maybe, so he didn't play after that, but he did look really nice when he did play. So I'm glad you shouted him out as well. But Trevor, I think that's really about it on, the NBA Summer League. I don't really think we have anything else to add on that. Just a few, players we want to touch on before we moved on. But Trevor, I wanted to move on to something else because, there was a lot of things that happened in the NBA while we were away, a lot of trades, a lot of signings that we didn't get to. And there was one thing in particular that I wanted to touch on, and this was the Russell Westbrook trade. Now, Russell Westbrook was traded to the Lakers. He was traded from the Washington Wizards over to the LA Lakers. And, a lot of people love this deal. It's a flashy deal. It's a splash. The Lakers gave up They gave up Montrezl Harrell. They gave up Kyle Kuzma. They gave up a bunch of
KCP and a first.
KCP and a first. Okay, so there you go. And I mean, I don't know, Trevor. I wanted to talk about this because I disagree with the vast majority of people who like this trade. Now, there are some who have been outspoken and say they didn't like it, and I'm going to be one of those people because I don't think this helps the Lakers at all. Look, it's going to help them in the regular season, okay? Russell Westbrook's a hard worker. He works hard night in and night out, okay? He's going to get you more wins than you otherwise would get with LeBron James, a guy who's going to rest his way through the season at his age, and Anthony Davis, a guy who, let's face it, is made of glass, okay? So these two guys, wouldn't win you as many games as you otherwise would have if you had Westbrook on your team. And because he's on their team, they'll win a lot more regular season games. So that's good. But here's where it gets tough, Trevor. Here's where it gets tough is the playoffs. Because I don't think this works at all. Westbrook doesn't shoot. He doesn't shoot the three. He's never shot it well. Sometimes he shot it like not terribly, but at this point in his career, he's shooting it pretty poorly, under 30%. Okay, he doesn't shoot the free throws, go to the free throw line. He doesn't shoot it that well. Mid-range doesn't shoot it that well. He's good at attacking the basket. That's what he's good at. And that's not going to work with LeBron James on the court. Okay? LeBron James' entire career, he's played with shooters. There's a reason he's done that. Okay? There's a reason LeBron's played with shooters his entire career because that's what he needs around him. Even Anthony Davis is a power forward / center, and he shoots threes. I mean, LeBron needs guys to space the floor because when he attacks the basket, he needs guys to kick it out to who can reliably hit the three. Westbrook can't do that. I think it's going to be way too crowded on the floor. I think this is like a splashy move. It'll sell some more tickets. It'll sell some more merchandise, but it won't win them another NBA title. So I think that this Lakers team is being overrated because I just don't think that Westbrook helps them win more games in the playoffs.
You make some points that I agree with and some points that I disagree with.
Okay.
I do think this trade helps LA. And I know Westbrook is not a great shooter. And LeBron, he's obviously a much improved shooter, but LeBron likes to play with guys who are more pure shooters, as Ryan said. However, I do think LeBron James has been able to win with whatever team he's given. I look back to some of the teams that he's been able to carry, and this Lakers team this Lakers team is actually the most. This team might be better than the Miami team. And I'm being serious when I say that in terms of raw talent, just because Anthony Davis is still in his prime. And yes, Anthony Davis is made of glass, but when healthy, he is a top 10 player in this league. Russell Westbrook is still playing at a very high level. And LeBron, people forget LeBron was playing at an MVP caliber level before he got injured last season. I believe he was at 25, 8, and 8 when he had that ankle injury that sidelined him for 6 weeks. So LeBron is still playing at an incredibly high level. And here's why I think this is going to work. And here's why I think it's going to be a Lakers-Suns Western Conference Finals. And I don't know if I'm going to pick in that series. My heart is telling me to pick the Suns. But my head's telling me the Lakers might be not a great matchup for us. Westbrook, I'll say this. LeBron is just a magician when it comes to just figuring out ways to make teams work and gel. Every year now for maybe the last 5 years, going back to his Cleveland days, they have completely revamped his roster every year, and he has won every year with the exception of his first year in LA where they, were very underwhelming. Then they bring in Anthony Davis and they win a title. So for me, I think he's going to be able to get the most out of Russell Westbrook, and he's going to be able to milk what Russell Westbrook does very well. As Ryan mentioned, and this is where I agree, Russell Westbrook will drastically help them in the regular season.
Yes.
He's going to work hard every night. He is in fantastic shape. He's always healthy. It seems like it doesn't seem like he's ever injured for long periods of time. And that's huge for the Lakers because LeBron is older and AD's made of glass. So if Westbrook can bear a lot of the burden in the regular season and you bring in a fresh LeBron James, a fresh Anthony Davis in the playoffs with shooters like Malik Monk, Kent Bazemore, Carmelo Anthony, guys who can hit it, that is huge for the Lakers. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the West in the regular season, and I wouldn't be surprised if they won the West in the playoffs.
Wow.
Ryan is right. Westbrook, on paper, not being a great shooter, you wouldn't think he's a good fit with LeBron. But I'm inclined to disagree slightly just because of their personal relationship and because Westbrook has never won a title. I think Westbrook will be able to, or LeBron will be able to get Westbrook to sacrifice some of those outside shots. He'll be able to keep Westbrook on the straight and narrow. And I think, like I said, I think he's going to be able to milk everything he can out of Russell Westbrook. And there's a lot to milk. I think Russell Westbrook is a very, very good NBA player still. And keep in mind, they don't need Westbrook to make threes, right? LeBron can hit jumpers. Malik Monk's an excellent shooter. Carmelo Anthony is an excellent shooter. Anthony Davis likes to play from the perimeter. They need Westbrook for energy, playmaking, some scoring, but mainly just his hustle and his night in and night out, work hard mentality. And don't forget, he's a Hall of Famer. So for me, I do like this move by the Lakers. They have no future, which is great. I want them to go all in now. I mean, they have the minute LeBron leaves, what is Westbrook? Westbrook's like 34, 35 now, and maybe not that old, maybe 33. The Lakers have absolutely no future. They're clearly going all in right now. They just brought in DeAndre Jordan for whatever reason. So I actually think the Westbrook move is going to work for the Lakers. It'll be interesting come playoff time how it's going to be. You would think LeBron's going to be the primary on-ball facilitator, but will Westbrook, take some of that burden as well?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to find out how that plays out.
Look, I'm not going to harp on this too much. I agree with some of what you said. At the end of the day, we're just going to disagree on if this makes the Lakers a better playoff team. I just look, there's a reason the Rockets were better when Westbrook was hurt back in the bubble. There's a reason, he didn't win without KD. I get obviously losing KD's tough, but, he just didn't win anything. There's a reason Beal and Westbrook, scraped into the play-in. I don't know. I'm just not the biggest Westbrook fan when it comes playoff time. So I just don't really think that his style of play in today's NBA translates to a lot of playoff wins. But we'll see what happens. You're right. I mean, with LeBron, maybe he can change that. Maybe he can turn it around for him. Maybe he can, get him winning. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It'll certainly be interesting. I think it all hinges on AD's health, obviously. And as one of the most injury-prone players, probably the most injury-prone star in the league, it's really, really a big question mark. But we'll see what happens. It'll definitely be interesting. Are they better than the Suns? I don't know.
Close.
It's definitely close. But that's a conversation for another time, Trevor. I wanted to move on to the sport. As long as that's okay with you, I want to move on to the sport that's really coming up next week, which is the NFL. Trevor, and we've been waiting for this for a long, long time. I know I have been, both for my team, the Browns, and for fantasy. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be a great year. So I'm really excited about it. I wanted to start off by asking you, is there a team going into the season that you're either pretty high on, more than most, or a team that you're pretty low on, lower than most people, and why?
I have one of each for you, Ryan. I'm going to start with the team that I'm higher on.
Let's hear it.
I like the Los Angeles Chargers this year, and here's why. One, they're getting their running back in Austin Eckler, who we've seen can be a very valuable pass catcher and lead back runner. Number two, as great of a rookie year as Justin Herbert had, I think having a full and, somewhat normal offseason to get even better will translate to an even better year too. They have two very big receiving targets for Herbert. Keenan Allen is a big body. Mike Williams is a big body. I like their receivers. Their tight end situation, I mean, it's whatever. I mean, Jared Cook is okay. Parham, whatever. And it's not great. No, every team has holes. But what I wanted to focus on is their defense. They're getting Derwin James back. Chris Harris is an elite corner. Their front seven is also elite. Jerry Tillery, Linval Joseph, Joey Bosa, Kenneth Murray Jr., who I believe did they draft him this past year or the year before?
It was the year
Kenneth
before,
Murray,
but I'm not sure.
So, but yeah, Kenneth Murray's going into a second year.
Yeah.
I think they've revamped the defense. I like who they brought in, Joe Staley, the old Los Angeles Rams D coordinator.
Mm.
And for me, I think the Los Angeles Chargers are due for a very big year. I think they're going to be a wild card team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they stole a playoff game, but I do think they will make the playoffs this year.
Wow. I mean, honestly, Trevor, that's a pretty bold prediction because I mean we got some good teams, especially in the AFC. I mean, that's definitely gonna be
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I think the Chargers could definitely be a wild card team. I mean, they've certainly got the high powered offense. I mean, Keenan Allen, Alson Eckler, as you said, Mike Williams, and they have a good offensive line, and also obviously like a young quarterback with a lot of potential in Justin Herbert. So
Right.
I mean, it certainly can happen. I think that's definitely a possibility. But Trevor, I don't know. The team that I want to talk about, a team that I was high on, was the Chicago Bears. And I don't know if you agree with me, Trevor. It sounds like you disagree with me.
Oh, I do.
But look, here's why. Okay. I doubted Justin Fields coming into this draft process, right? I didn't think he'd
I
be.
didn't. Who was
I
high
didn't
on him,
think I
Ryan?
didn't.
Who was high
Yeah,
on
hey,
Justin
you
Fields?
were, but also I do want to say I was high on Mac Jones, and I think that's going to pay off. But anyway,
Oh my gosh.
uh,
All right, we'll see about
I
that.
I think that Jones will be good. I also think Fields will be good. I think Fields is going to be very, very good. I think he fits really well with this Bears team. He actually gives
Mm-hmm.
them a jolt of energy that they desperately need that Trubisky didn't provide, that Andy Dalton's certainly not going to provide, and that
Mm-hmm.
Fields does provide. So I do want to say this is contingent on Fields playing before maybe week 3 or 4. If they wait till mid end of the year even to play him, to start him, then
Mm-hmm.
the Bears aren't going to be good. But I think that they'll end up benching Andy Dalton after the first couple of weeks. I hope that they do because they're just going to lose games if they start him. It's
That
ridiculous.
I agree with.
It's honestly ridiculous to me that you even think I get he's a veteran presence, but come on. Why are these so many of these coaches harping on this old mantra of let's not start our rookie quarterback because we need to ease him into the system, let him learn the NFL. Have you seen your young quarterback in the preseason? This guy was he was making throws that most quarterbacks that have been around for 5 to 6 years can't make. I mean, he's playing really well. Justin Fields, he was playing elite. Some of these throws were sensational. And you're going to bench him for Andy Dalton to start the year? I think that's ridiculous. So look, me saying I'm high on the Bears is contingent on Fields playing most of the year. But if he does, I think they're going to be pretty good. I actually think they can make a wild card spot. I like their offense if he's playing. I like Montgomery if he's playing. I like Allen Robinson a lot, and I think Darnell Mooney's going to be really solid this year. I think he's going to be a really good player, a really good deep threat for this team. And I like, and their defense has been solid for years. It's going to continue to be solid. So if Fields plays, their offense steps up. I think they could be a wild card team.
Yeah, see, they were a wild card team last year. So for you to say they could be a wild card team this year implies that they're not improving. And that's exactly what I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be an eight
Yeah,
and
but
eight, 9-7 team. I think they're going to be slightly above average. So I wouldn't say I'm high on them per se,
mm,
but I'm not low on them either. I think they have a very solid defense still. And I look at some of these guys they have on defense. Eddie Jackson is an elite safety. Khalil Mack is one of the best defensive players in the game.
yeah,
Roquan Smith is still a very solid young defender. Akeem Hicks on the defensive line is also a very, very talented Pro Bowl caliber defensive player. For me, the reason why I'm not high on the Bears is Matt Nagy, and I don't love what he's done since that first year. I was very high on him after that first year where they went 12-4
mm,
and lost that heartbreaker in the wild card to the Eagles. But since then, he hasn't done much for me. He wasn't able to develop Trubisky. He is, for whatever
yeah,
reason, committed to Andy Dalton, at least for the start of the
unbelievable.
season. I don't get that decision. I agree with Ryan. I think Justin Fields is already,
Yeah,
I don't want to say he's already better. To be fair, Fields only did that against backups in the preseason. So, I mean, I guess that's the argument against starting him week 1. But I completely agree with you on this point. I don't understand why, if you
yeah.
watched Justin Fields, why would you keep him waiting? Why not start him, even if it sacrifices you maybe for your, slightly this season, which it might not even. Just think about the long-term return on Justin Fields getting some early reps in his rookie year, right?
Mm,
I just think keeping him waiting a year, it's worked for some guys. It worked for Patrick Mahomes, right? He waited a year,
yeah.
he comes in and he's an MVP. But it's also, it's also been not so great for some other guys like Tua Tagovailoa. He has been a little underwhelming so far, and that was because the Miami Dolphins refused to commit to him his rookie year. So for me, I agree with you, Ryan. I think this will hamper Fields a little bit by going with Dalton. They might go with Fields by the bye week. Who knows? Um, so for me, the reason why I'm not high on the Bears is because they were already a playoff team last year, and
I mean,
I don't even expect them. They might be a bottom end wild card team, but I think they're again just a slightly above average football team this year.
yeah, I mean, that's fair. Look, I'll move on from this in a second. I just do want to say, like, sure, they were a 7 seed last year, but like what I'm saying, I'm high on them. I more mean like I just think the energy around this team will be a lot higher. I think that there will be a lot more talk about them being a serious playoff team. I think
If
last
they
year,
win, maybe.
I mean, yeah, I mean with Fields, like last year, were they really a serious playoff team? A seven
No.
seed with Nick Foles as quarterback or Trubisky, whoever was playing,
Mhm.
I don't even know. Not really. Right. So that's kind of what I mean. Like you're right. Like numbers wise, they might be similar in terms of seeding this year. I just think that the energy, the excitement, the legitimacy of the team will be a lot higher with Fields at quarterback this year. So, well, I mean, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. But Trevor, is there a team that you're kind of low on this year that you want to bring up real quick?
Yeah, I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. People might be like, well, why? They have an elite defense. They were, a very high end playoff team last year until they got bounced in the wild card. I'm just not I'm not sold on this team for whatever reason. And I look at it on paper and I see talent everywhere.
Mm.
Najee Harris, I think, is going to be a stud. Um, Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool, very nice receiving trio. Their
Mm.
defense might be top 5 in the NFL. Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Devin Bush, Minka Fitzpatrick. I don't know. But something for me, and this is why I'm actually not high on him. I'll get to this. Ben Roethlisberger, I just don't know. And they were what were they 10-0 last year or 9-0? They started the year
Yeah.
last year, and then they go 2-5, and they get bounced out of the playoffs. There's just something missing there. I don't know if it's time to move on from Roethlisberger. He looks a little thinner, at least this. He looks like he's in a little bit better shape. I don't know. It's weird. I don't really have like a concrete reason for why I think the Steelers are going to be worse this year.
Mm.
I'm just not high on them. I mean, they have a great defense. I like Mike Tomlin as a coach, but for whatever reason, they just seemed to struggle last year. Towards the end of the year, teams just started figuring them out.
Yes.
The one thing I do think will help them is Najee Harris. I think they're going to have a lot more balance in their offense. I don't think Roethlisberger's going to have to throw 50 passes a game. I think they're going to be able to give Najee Harris the ball a lot. Another sign of concern, I do think their offensive line got a lot worse this offseason. I know they lost. I think he's on the Ravens now. I forgot his name.
Wait. I don't remember. I don't remember.
I forgot his name. I know. Hold on. Let me look this. This is bothering me.
That's all right.
Villanueva. Alejandro Villanueva. He's on the Ravens now.
Oh.
I think he's a pretty big loss. I think they lost
No,
another
yeah.
offensive lineman as well.
They lost like 3 or 4 offensive linemen, Trevor, like 3 or 4 starting offensive linemen.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was right. Okay.
They
So
lost
for me,
most of it.
So I think for me, they're kind of right at they're teetering on the, we need to move off of Roethlisberger phase versus maybe we give it one more year.
Mm.
So for me, I think Pittsburgh could be a playoff team, but it's a very tough AFC, as Ryan mentioned, and they didn't get better. They got Najee Harris, but
They got worse.
They got worse outside of that. So
yeah, and I'm not gonna talk about this too much, but I mean, like I agree. Like it's mostly their offensive line for me. Like I said, they lost 3 or 4 starting offensive linemen this year. And when you had no run game last year and you decided to go out and draft the best running back in the class, a guy who I think has elite talent in Najee Harris, and you give him you give him a totally revamped below average offensive line, that's a recipe for disaster, Trevor. I mean, Big Ben's old. He doesn't have mobility. Not like he ever really had that much, but he certainly could take more hits. I mean, the guy can't throw down the field as much. He can't take as many hits, and Najee's not going to be able to run super effectively, in my opinion, with a below-average offensive line. So I think that's a big concern. I think they had Pouncey retire this past year, Trevor.
Yes,
so that was another big loss.
As well.
So yeah, that's why I think they'll be worse. That O-line's it's a big problem. and they lost Bud Dupree. I mean, like they lost some key pieces. So I just think that that's something to keep in mind when they do end up struggling. I really think they finished
Mm-hmm.
third. I think they finished third in the AFC North. And I don't think it's all that close. I think there's a pretty decent gap between the Ravens and the Browns and the Steelers and the Bengals. So we'll see
Right.
what happens. But I do agree with you on that. And then my team that I thought would, that I'm not very high on is the Colts. And like, look, like the Colts are a well-coached team. Their offensive line's always been really good these last few years. They have
Mm-hmm.
a solid running back in Jonathan Taylor. They have a respectable defense. I just think that their quarterback play and their receiving core is just too bad to overcome. I don't think this team can overcome this. I don't expect them to make the playoffs. I actually wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars finish ahead of them in the AFC South. I'm that low on them. And it's because I think Carson Wentz has no confidence left, Trevor. He has no confidence. And I feel bad for the guy. Maybe he can get it back. Trevor. I think was it you that told me that the head coach of the Colts was his offensive coordinator in Philly? I think it was you who told me that.
Yeah, when Wentz had his elite year, Frank Reich was
Yeah.
the OC in Philly,
So I mean,
and
yeah. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's that. So I mean, that's possible that maybe he can turn it around. From what I've seen from him, it's just I don't know. He lost all his confidence, all his ability went with it, and it's sad. But like, it's going to cause them to struggle really quite badly. And the receiving core is a bunch of nobodies. They have Michael Pittman with potential, but they have Paris Campbell and Zach Pascal. I mean, come on. Like, come on. That's
Yeah,
not
it's a really
good.
bad receiving core.
That's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So yeah, I just don't think they're going to be good. I don't think they can overcome that. So I'm pretty low on them because of that. I don't think they can overcome the receiving core and the quarterback play.
I disagree slightly. I do think, Wentz was definitely burnt out in Philadelphia, and the team they gave him, his last couple of years there was horrible. His offensive
Pretty
line
bad.
was really bad. So Ryan's right. His confidence in his play definitely took a big hit for the
Mhm.
worse. But sometimes a guy needs a change of scenery. And I think going back to Frank Reich will be huge for Carson Wentz. I think he will have a strong bounce back year.
Mm.
It will be limited just because the Colts do not have great skill position players outside of Jonathan Taylor. As Ryan mentioned, their receivers are horrible. Michael Pittman looks okay, but Zach Pascal and Paris Campbell have done nothing since they've come into the NFL for me. T.Y. Hilton right now is on IR, was probably their best receiver for a long time, but he's hurt. They do have an elite offensive line, I will say, but when none of your receivers can get open, it doesn't matter how much time you have to throw the football. You're just not going to be able to be productive in that area.
Fair.
Their defense is good, but not great. I think they have a good front seven, but I don't think their secondary is all that strong.
Mm.
And the AFC, like we keep saying, the AFC is really good. So I'm not necessarily low on the Colts. I think they're going to finish second in their division. Their division's really weak. I don't
It
think
is.
Jacksonville's good at all. Trevor Lawrence has looked pretty good, but Jacksonville to me did not look very good in the preseason. I thought their offensive line is going to be a huge issue this year. So I do think the Colts will finish second. I wouldn't be surprised if they went
Fair.
7-10 or 8-9, but I agree with you, Ryan. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we sort of agree, I guess. I think
Wentz is where
I
we
think you
disagree
just,
the most, actually.
and also I think you just think the AFC South is just like horrendous outside of Tennessee,
It
which
is.
like,
I think it is.
I mean, that's entirely fair. I mean, I just think that there's a chance Lawrence can carry that offense to a decent finish. But we'll see. Trevor, I think that does it for this section. I think though, we had one last thing we wanted to get to, and last year, Trevor, we did a full episode on this, a full podcast on this, but we just wanted to touch on it a little bit before the NFL season started off, because this will be our last podcast before the season starts on Thursday, and that's talking about a few fantasy players, and it can be players that are established that you want to talk about, or sleepers that you want to talk about and kind of point out to people, guys you think that can turn out to be good either this year or in the future. And Trevor, I mean, do you have any guys who you want to bring up, guys who you think will be better than expected, worse than expected? Who?
Look out for Corey Davis in fantasy this year, and here's why. I want to compare Calvin Ridley's 2019 stats to Corey Davis's stats from last year. So Calvin Ridley in 2019, when he was still the number 2 option in Atlanta with Julio, 63 catches, 866 yards, 7 touchdowns. Now, if we go to Corey Davis's stat line
Uh-oh.
from 2020, it's not going to be those
Oh,
exact
no.
numbers.
You're actually going to
Uh,
compare the two, aren't you?
Corey Davis, 65 balls for 984 yards, and I believe it was 6 touchdowns. Or was it 7 as well? Whatever. Point being,
Wow.
very similar stats. He had 5 touchdowns, excuse me. Calvin Ridley all of a sudden becomes the number one in his offense. Fast forward to 2020.
Oh,
Ridley
my
goes for
gosh.
90 catches, 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I don't know if Davis will be that good because he is playing with a rookie quarterback, on a very suspect
Mm-hmm.
team. But I would expect Corey Davis to have a big jump in his production. I think he'll catch 75, 80 balls. I think he'll be a 1,200-yard receiver. And I would expect him to catch, at least a couple more touchdowns, maybe 7 or 8 balls. But the way he's being drafted in regular fantasy drafts, I think he's being a little underrated, a little undervalued. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a top 15, top 20 fantasy receiver campaign this year.
Wow. You really,
Not saying he's
wow.
going to go not saying he's going to go for 90, 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns, but I
Yeah,
do think he
sure.
will have a big jump in his numbers this year.
Interesting. I think that, it's entirely dependent on Zach Wilson. To me, look, like, here's
Mm-hmm.
the thing. Like, you can make fun of Matt Ryan all you want. This guy's a solid quarterback in this league. He always has been, always will be. He won't put up like insane numbers like he did back in his MVP season or, the season when it's the Super Bowl. But like, come on. Like, Zach Wilson's got to be good for Corey Davis to get to this level. I
Does he though?
personally,
Because Allen Robinson has been very productive and he's never had a quarterback. In terms of fantasy, I think Davis can be productive with a rookie Wilson, but
I,
go ahead.
I suppose, for me, the difference, if I'm going to be honest, is I think Allen Robinson just has more talent than Corey Davis does. So like that's kind of where like maybe I would just kind of push back. But if you think Davis could have as much talent or near as much talent as Allen Robinson, then like yeah, like you're entirely right. Like we'll see what happens. I
My
do think
bigger point
Davis.
here is my
I
bigger
know.
point is Davis has been somewhere around the 50th ranked drafted receiver.
Yeah,
And I think
he's.
that's very, very low. I think he could be a top 20
I was
receiver
I was
this
gonna
year.
say I was
So
gonna
go
say,
ahead.
Trevor, I do partially agree with you. I think he'll be a top 25 receiver. And look, I say that for a lot of guys, it seems, but I think that, his floor is like top 30. I expect him to be top 25 because he's the number one receiver in New York. And if you're a
Right.
number one receiver on any team, like you're going to get targets, you're going to get opportunity, you're going to get red zone looks. He's going to get all those. I think Zach Wilson's going to be good. I think that'll inflate Corey Davis more. So I do expect him to have a top 25 season. So I do agree with you. And like, if he's getting drafted at spot wide receiver 50, that's ridiculous. That's just disgusting. Like, he is at work. Like, I'd take him top 30. I really would. I think he'll be very good. And he's a one on a team, and that alone should allow you to, look into him and maybe at the
Right.
very least have him as a flex play. So,
Right.
I think he'll be decent. And a guy that Trevor, I want to talk about, isn't really a guy that's going to make a lot of noise this year. And I'm going for more longer term guys with my two players that I want to talk
But
about. I want to talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones. Look, I had to get a little bit of the Cleveland Browns in here. And let me tell you, if you're in a dynasty league like we are, if you're in, even a really deep league and you have space on your bench, get Donovan Peoples-Jones. This guy, I'm telling you right now, he was the number one receiver out of high school, 5-star recruit. Jim Harbaugh almost ruined him. Okay? It was a 6th-round pick because of Jim Harbaugh ruining his career in Michigan with terrible quarterback play and terrible just coaching. Terrible coaching. He's been sensational. He's had a great camp in Cleveland. He had a really good year last year. Trevor, I'm sure you remember the big plays Peoples-Jones made. He won the game for the Browns against Cincy. He had multiple
right.
big plays against Tennessee. He made big plays in limited time last year. And I think when OBJ or Landry get cut next year because of cap reasons, I think that Peoples-Jones is easily going to be a top 20, probably top 15 receiver in the league once he gets starting quality receiving snaps. And if Odell gets hurt this year, pick up Donovan Peoples-Jones and start him. Okay. I'm telling you, at least at flex. Okay. I'm telling you, this guy's going to be really good. He's a massive receiver who has speed. He can catch, he has strong hands, and he can catch contested balls all day. great route runner. He does it all, and he's learning from the best. Landry and OBJ have been great leaders for him. I'm telling you, he's going to be really good. So keep an eye out for Donovan Peoples-Jones both this year, if there's an injury, and in the future, because I think he's going to be legit in fantasy. So keep an eye on him, especially in longer-term leagues. And then, Trevor, I'm just going to say my second player right now.
Player or two in fantasy to keep an eye on this year. Do
Hey,
we really need to keep an eye on him this year?
Hey, I told you, if there's an injury, you pick him up. I'm telling you, you start him. Okay, I'm telling you, keep an eye on him.
Theoretically, a meteor could hit Earth. I agree with you.
Sure. Look, Trevor, you can disrespect DPJ all you want. Okay, when this guy pops off, he has a lot of big games. Okay, when he's a starter, don't come running to me and asking for apologies. Okay, asking.
Ryan,
look, what?
I'm a gambling man, Ryan. I want to put $5 on it right now. Donovan Peoples-Jones won't be a top 40 receiver in fantasy this year.
That's tough, Trevor, because I'd basically be betting on Odell Beckham Jr.'s injury. Okay,
It's a fairly decent bet. It's a 50-50 bet, just considering Odell Beckham's injury history.
I mean, I'm going to probably lose this bet, but look, let's have a little fun. I'll make this bet with you. All right, top 40 receiver this year. Okay, let's hope.
Go.
Look, I don't want to root for my team's injuries. Okay, I'm a Browns fan, but let's see if Odell gets hurt. Maybe the DPJ gets some time, and if he does, look out. And I'm telling you, if you're in a dynasty league or a long-term league, a redraft league, take him. Okay, this guy's going to be legit. Okay, if there's an injury this year, he'll be legit. Next year, especially, he'll be legit. So buy low on him now. I'm just telling you, okay, before everyone jumps on the bandwagon, because he's going to be very good. And the other guy I want to talk about, Trevor, is Terrace Marshall. This guy, he's a rookie out of LSU. He had a really good preseason. That's why I want to talk about him. He had a touchdown in the last preseason game. He's had a lot of nice catches this entire preseason. And I think that he will be look, I wouldn't be surprised if he became the number one receiver in Carolina within 2 years. I'm not the biggest DJ Moore fan. I never have been. A lot of people have been high on him for a long time. I mean, I don't love him. That's why in fantasy, I think he's inconsistent, doesn't get a ton of volume. Doesn't have good quarterback play. That's kind of also a big issue. But I think Terrace Marshall could be very good. I think that, again, he's really good at catching contested balls. He's good down the field. And I think that he will make Sam Darnold better. And I think that in fantasy, again, he's a young guy. You're going to have him on your bench. But he can make an impact this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he became a solid flex play. He might be, outside of Trevor, in my opinion, Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase, I think Terrace Marshall could easily be the third best rookie receiver in fantasy this year. I actually am really high on him. These LSU receivers, man, over the past few years, they've become really, really good. I mean, and I think that Marshall and Chase are going to be very good. So keep an eye out for Terrace Marshall. I think Sam Darnold, they'll be able to get him the ball. He's a decent enough quarterback. And I think he could be a flex play this year and then more into the future. So I don't know if, Trevor, you have someone else you want to talk about, maybe good, bad.
I agree with you on Marshall. I am very high on him as well. For this year, we'll see. Again, the topic is for this year, but I do think long term, you're right. There's a lot of value there with Terrace Marshall.
I think this year too.
One guy that I'm not so high on, and in retrospect, not so high on means I don't think he'll be as good as he was last year, is Jonathan Taylor. I think the Indianapolis running back room is fairly crowded. I think Nyheim Hines is going to get a lot of the passing down reps, and I think Marlon Mack will steal a couple carries a game as well. So for me, Jonathan Taylor will be the lead back this year. I agree.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to get that kind of production that we saw at the end of last season where he's getting 20 to 25, maybe even 30 carries a game. The running back room is much more crowded this year in Indianapolis. And that's the main reason why I don't think he's going to be a top 5 running back. I still think he, again, in a dynasty format, he is a very strong asset to have for sure. But I would say for this year, I wouldn't be surprised if he was slightly worse, if he was in the RB 8 to 12 range, which I think he was RB 5 last year. So I do see him as a slightly worse finisher this year. But again, he's still a borderline RB 1, very, very high end RB 2. But I do expect to see some decline in his fantasy performance this year, just because of the other guys that Indianapolis has on that team.
Yeah, he was actually running back 4 last year.
Okay.
Yeah, he was really high. And I mean, look, I agree with you. I've never been the biggest fan of Jonathan Taylor. And for a lot of the year, I looked like I was going to be right. Like, I thought he was like a guy who everyone thought was going to be really, really good, get a lot of volume, and he did. But he didn't really have many very good games. He had over 90 yards once in the first 14, 15 weeks, Trevor. And then all of a sudden, he just burst onto the scene the last 4 or 5 weeks. He had monster games. end of the season last year, and he was just sensational. But for me, I'm just not the biggest fan of Jonathan Taylor. I think that offensive line is elite, but I think that he reminds me sort of Josh Jacobs, at least when I would watch him. And granted, I didn't watch a lot of him when he popped off at the end of the year. I watched a lot of him early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys just get high volume. They don't get a lot of high yards per carry. They're kind of heavy runners who fight through a lot of contact, but always just kind of bowl up the middle. And I'm not the biggest fan of either one of them. I think that Jacobs, I expect him to be in the 8 to 12 range. I think that's a really good prediction. He'll be good. He'll be a solid player, but he will not be elite like he was last year. And I think that he'll take a step back. I definitely agree with you. So I think that was a good call. I think that was a good player to name because I do definitely agree. But Trevor, I don't know if I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention, but I mean, that's it for me. That's all I got. I don't know if you have something else you want to toss in before we wrap this up.
I didn't come prepared with any shout outs this time around, Ryan. I do want to shout out Drake. Dropping his album last night. I've listened to part of it.
Not Kanye though,
huh? Kanye's album was terrible in my opinion. I don't want to be mean, but I thought his album was horrible. Drake's album though, on the other hand, I think has been pretty good so far. I haven't listened to the whole thing yet. Shout out my Phoenix Suns. I love you guys. I miss y'all so much. Shout out, happy birthday, Mikal Bridges. I believe it was his birthday on Tuesday or Wednesday. Shout out Devin Booker for living a dream life. MVP caliber basketball player.
Yeah.
Dating a supermodel and Kendall Jenner.
Kendall Jenner. Yeah.
He won a gold medal. He should have won a championship. If we were fully healthy, I think we would have won that championship. That's a
Dario Saric is the difference.
Day. Dario Saric definitely, I think, is a slight difference. And I'm gonna listen. In games 1 and 2, when Dario played, we won fairly easily. Games 3, 4, 5, and 6, we didn't have Dario, we lost. I'm not saying that's the real reason why we lost, but I do think Dario meant something to that series, I will admit.
Wow. All right.
Do I have any more shout-outs? Shout out Ryan's Cleveland Browns. I actually think they're going to be a very good team this year. I think Baker's grown up. I think Odell is going to stay healthy finally. They got their coach in Stefanski. Shout out my Cardinals. We're going to fire Cliff Kingsbury after we go 8-10 this year and get a real coach. So That's all I have to say, Ryan.
Yeah, Trevor, look, I agree with you. Kingsbury's out after this year. If you guys finish last in the NFC West, that's probably the hardest division in the entire league.
Finishing last in the NFC West is basically finishing second in any other division.
Actually, true. I was gonna say it's like finishing second in the AFC South. Hey, honestly, okay, or the NFC North or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I agree. What was I gonna say? I don't even remember what you shouted out at first, but I mean, I'll shout out
one more shout out. Actually, this happened a few weeks ago though. I don't even know if we talked about this on the podcast. We might have. Shout out Tyler Gilbert for my Arizona Diamondbacks. It's been a dreadful season, but in his first career start, tosses a no-hitter. Shout out Tyler Gilbert.
That was crazy. And while we're doing shout-outs, shout out Chris Sale for having his third immaculate inning of his career, the most since Sandy Koufax, the only other pitcher to do that. Chris Sale.
What did he do?
An immaculate inning is where you strike out 3 batters in a row with 9 pitches total, so 3 strikes each batter.
Wow.
Yeah. He's had it happen. It was his third inning of his career where he did that. And that's the most ever other than Sandy Koufax, who is a Hall of Famer. So shout out to Chris Sale. Coming off of Tommy John surgery. So that's also a crazy accomplishment. So, mad respect to him. That's crazy. Really hard to do even once, much less 3 times. So that's actually insane. So shout out to him. And Trevor, I like the shout outs we did in these podcasts. This is good stuff. But I think that's all I have. I mean, my Browns, shout out to us. I think we're going to lose week 1, but that's okay because we're going to go 12-6 this year, maybe 13-5. Have a great season. And I'm excited. So we'll see what happens. But Trevor, I think that about does it for me. If that about does it for you, I think we can wrap this podcast up.
That does it for me.
All right, sounds good. We will. It's good to be back, and we'll be back after the first NFL week. With highlight review of the games, review of the teams, review of the players, everything, you name it. And we'll talk about some college football. Week 1 is coming up tomorrow, Trevor, so it's going to be a big week. And I'm excited. So we'll see you guys next week. And until then, hope you enjoyed.